Hey everybody, Lane here. I am so excited about today's video because we're going to talk about what do you do when church online becomes normal, becomes routine. Most churches are about 1 month into doing completely virtual online services, and it's starting to become the norm, and it can lose its freshness. Your people can just kind of get used to it like they would if you were meeting in person, and old habits can come back into place where maybe they don't want to attend as much, or maybe you become somewhat bored with it, or they become bored with it, or maybe it becomes routine and you don't know how to keep it fresh and people are losing engagement. I don't know how many more weeks of this that we have where we're going to be in this situation where we have to do church virtually, but I do know that it is crucial that your church and my church keep it fresh. And so in today's video, I want to give you 3 things that you can do to make sure that whether we're in this for the next month or the next 2 months or the next 2 weeks, you keep it at top of mind with your people, you keep them engaged, and you keep online church from becoming routine. And most importantly, you keep your people on mission and on target, whether you're meeting in person or online. That is coming up. My name is Lane. This is Preaching Donkey. Typically on Preaching Donkey, we talk about preaching and how we can improve our preaching. And so I want to put something free in your hands. If you go to my website, which is preachingdonkey.com/21days, the link is also down in the description. You can get my free 21-day guide to creating killer sermons. It's just a very easy process, takes you over 3 weeks just to kind of think differently about sermon prep, whether you're a novice and you just started preaching or you've been preaching for a long time. It'll be a really great resource for you to get your hands on. All right, let's dig into today's video. There are 3 things that you can do right now as we're in this situation where church online has become, for the time being, the new normal. Now, when we first went into this, when we first started doing church online, at least for my church, it was fresh. It was new. It was exciting. It was different. The situation we're in, where everybody has to stay at home, was novel. Okay, it was just kind of, hey, this is interesting. What's happening? Well, that becomes routine after a while, and everything kind of becomes routine, right? The church becomes routine. The situation that everybody's in becomes routine. And so the idea of, hey, this is pretty cool, check it out, check out what our church is doing on Sundays online, becomes just kind of another thing they have to attend, and it can become easy for people to disengage with it. And so we as leaders, we as pastors, have to keep our eye on the ball of what really matters. And I think that there are 3 things that we should be doing and we should maintain throughout this so that people are engaged with what we're doing. Okay, the first thing is avoid becoming noise. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. In this new paradigm that we're in, okay, most people are at home. Most people, if they're still working, they're working at home, or if they work in certain sectors, they're working outside of the home, or they have been furloughed, so they are home, okay? Schools are off, so the kids are at home, okay? Churches are meeting via the internet at home. Schools are doing most of their work online at home. So everybody's at home. So here's what everybody thinks. Everybody thinks, well, you're just sitting at home. You can attend this Facebook Live. You can jump on this Zoom call. Your people are getting inundated by every organization under the sun to go watch their thing, to go be a part of their thing, to go jump online, and it can become the new schedule overwhelm. Where before it was, okay, we've got this obligation, and our kids have practice after school, and our kids have this, and all of these things that people had to do have been stripped away, and for a brief moment, there was a little bit of reprise, and now it's just reinserted itself in a different way. It's all virtual, but you still got to go here and attend this virtual meeting. You still got to jump on at 8 o'clock and attend this virtual meeting. You still got to do this at 12:30, at 3, at 1. And so the church can become noise if we're not careful. So here's what I would suggest. As you are maintaining engagement, not just on Sunday, but through the week, be very strategic and purposeful about when you ask people to jump on live prayer or devotions or some kind of engagement online live, okay? Think that through and be strategic. And if you've got a staff, work with your staff to make sure everybody's speaking the same language so that you're not just overwhelming people with a whole suite of activities online in a given week, and you just become noise, and people don't know how to decipher between what's really important and what is kind of a waste of their time. Because what will happen is people will pull back altogether. And so I've seen some churches where they're on every single day, and they can make that work if it's purposeful and if it means something to their people. I've seen other churches that are on 2 or 3 times a week, and none of it really is worth anybody's time. And so it just becomes noise. So it's not necessarily a matter of frequency. It's a matter of strategy. It's a matter of import. It's a matter of making sure that your people know and that you know why you're doing it. You can't at this point just do it because it's novel and it's different. And hey, isn't this neat that we're getting on Facebook Live or on YouTube Live or doing this Zoom call? No one is shocked by that. No one's impressed by that. It has no novelty anymore. So you really have to think about, why am I doing this? And what is the next step that I'm leading people on? What is the purpose behind this? And is this worth it? Or am I just going to be, is the church just going to be another thing in a sea of things that people are being pulled into right now? So avoid becoming noise. Now, I want to address something that churches always kind of think about. You might be thinking, well, no, this is the church. It's not noise. It's the work of God. It's kingdom work. Yes. So respect it enough to not make it fluff and flutter and just busyness. Respect that kingdom work enough to only pull your people into it when it truly matters and is going to add value, is going to keep them engaged and on mission. And you as the leader need to decide what that looks like. All right, number 2, and this pertains mostly to your online broadcast on the weekend, on Sunday, and that is keep it fresh. Keep it fresh, okay? If there's one thing that churches are notorious for, it is to just getting into a routine, finding it very comfortable, and sticking with it for the rest of time, okay? So if you've got something that you're doing on Sunday, online, you've got kind of a service flow. I'm not saying blow that up. I'm saying within those parameters that you've set, which if they're working, keep doing them. Figure out, how can you keep it fresh? How can you keep it engaging? What can you do so that it doesn't just become mundane and boring? For example, instead of maybe just the normal music and a sermon, what if you had music and everybody sings together, and then you have a few life change stories, people in your church whose lives are being changed by Jesus through this process. You grab interviews from them via Zoom or Skype or whatever, or FaceTime. You record it somehow, and then you show that on Sunday, or maybe you do it live, okay? But is there a way to highlight life change? One of the things we've been doing that's been really cool is, in the process of being quarantined, we've now baptized 5 people during these Sunday sermons. In fact, or Sunday services. In fact, last week, which was Easter, we had 3 people baptized. We did a social distancing baptism where all of their friends and family drove in their cars and watched from their cars as they were baptized in this trough that we had on somebody's property. And it was incredible. It was amazing. It was such a beautiful thing. We showed that on Sunday. It was an awesome experience. And so it was, and we're not doing that to keep it fresh, but it just so happens that when you highlight life change stories, it keeps it fresh. It keeps it new. It keeps it real. It's not just, here's the music and here's the sermon. There's something there that is engaging people where they are. And one of the best ways to do that is to capture stories of where people are right now. I've talked a lot in my previous videos in this kind of time that we're in on different ways to keep the service engaging. So you can go back and check that out. Having a good leadership structure. We've been doing micro churches, keeping your sermons engaging. Your worship set needs to be engaging and relevant to what people are going through. So you can look at those videos. I'll link to them in the description. But for right now, just think about going forward for the next few weeks. What could you do that would maybe break the routine a little bit? Maybe be something that people look at and say, oh, this is something that is new and it's catching my attention. One of the things we talk about at Preaching Donkey is tension, that people won't pay attention to your sermon unless you've given them a reason to care about what you're about to say. They have to know that paying attention to you is going to be worth their time. And in the same way, your whole service, because it's kind of a production, you're building something that you're showing to people. They're watching it in their homes. You've got to demonstrate to them that there's something in it that keeps their attention. You might be thinking, well, that's unspiritual and I don't like that. And that may be true. It may be unspiritual and you may not like it, but that is the way people are, and that's how they receive information. And if we're going to be missionaries, we're going to be missional and intentional, we've got to meet people where they are, and we've got to be able to pull them in. So I think there's a massive case to be made for just keeping it fresh, for looking at this Sunday and saying, what is, not a gimmicky thing, but what is something that we can do differently? What is something that we can highlight? How is God working in our church, and how can we show that on Sunday? That might be all it takes to just keep it from being this monotonous, mundane thing that mirrors the Zoom meeting they had with their school talking about their kids' homework, okay? You want the church to be the best thing they do all week. And so don't just put the clutch, push in the clutch. It's been a while since I've driven a manual transmission. You don't want to push the clutch in and just sit back and go, well, we're good now. This is the new normal. You want to keep it fresh. Okay, number 3, and this is perhaps the most important thing. Celebrate the right wins. Okay, as we're doing church differently, we're all online, it can be very easy just to go back to what we've always done, which is focusing on attendance, right? Attendance and giving, nickels and noses, bucks and butts. Okay, there's all kinds of ways of describing this, but this is what we pastors do. It's like, well, we had X amount of people attending and our giving is still where it needs to be, or it's dropped a little bit, or it's raised a little bit. And those are metrics that we have to measure, and those are important things, but don't get stuck in the rut of saying that's all there is to celebrate. Celebrate the right wins. How is God changing lives in your church during this time? Who cares how many people are watching for 30 seconds online during your live stream on Sunday? Is it really relevant that somebody popped on and popped off? What's more important is, in our context, I've talked about this, we've got everybody in micro churches. So after the service airs at 10 o'clock, as soon as that's over, we have about 60 micro churches that are meeting. And so we're measuring attendance in the micro churches that are meeting via Zoom. Because to us, that is really the attendance on Sunday morning, is not just people who might have watched our live broadcast because it popped on their newsfeed, but people who went from that to the next step, which is the micro church. That's what we really want to focus on. And that's our measure of success, because if we know that if people are engaging in the micro church, that they're not doing life alone, that they're connected, that they're known, that their needs can be expressed, that their prayer needs can be prayed for, all of that stuff is happening in the micro church. And that's why we have to have a good leadership structure of those little micro churches. And so I don't know what it is for you, but I would say really think about, when you think about online church, when you think about this season, what have you been celebrating and why? And if you're celebrating the right things, then awesome. Keep doing that. But if there's something better that you could be celebrating, if there's something more along the lines of, hey, this is something God is doing and it's awesome, then let's begin celebrating those wins and really championing that to the people. Because people are going to take your cues as the leader of what they should really focus on and what should be important to them. And so if all they think is that, gosh, we had 1,000 people watching online, isn't that great? You want to really shift that into something more along the lines of what you really want to celebrate, which is people growing in their faith, people multiplying their faith to others, people being discipled, people making disciples, right? That's what we want to see happen. We want the gospel to go forward. And so we want to identify where that's happening and how it's happening as a result of what we're doing as a church, and then celebrate those wins. And so those are my encouragements for you, okay? Avoid becoming noise, keep it fresh, and celebrate the right wins. This is something that we're not doing perfectly. I'm just gonna tell you that. No church is perfect at this, and we're just as guilty as every church of breaking all three of these. But one of the things that we've identified is we've said, if we're gonna do this right for the next however many weeks we're in this, we've gotta nail these things down. And so my encouragement to you would be able to ask the question, what does it look like for us to not just become noise, okay? I think if you do that, if you're purposeful, then what's going to happen is when people see that you're live online, or they get that text or that email from you that says, hey, we're going to be on Zoom, they know it's got to be something good. Like I need to go. I may not go to something else, but I'm going to that because it's going to be worth my time, okay? If you keep it fresh, then what happens is people start to look forward to Sunday morning. They start to say, man, I can't wait because I know that it's going to encourage me. I'm going to see how God is working, and I'm going to be able to face another week of uncertainty and of a little bit of fear and stress because I know that God is working and that He has a plan. And if you're celebrating the right wins, what you're doing is you're teaching your people what's most important, okay? You're demonstrating what's most important to them because you're allowing them to see, here's what really matters. Over and over and over and over, you're putting in front of your people what really matters. And if what you say really matters begins to take hold in your church, then what happens is it begins to become your culture, and your people begin to self-lead towards those ends and not towards the things that don't matter as much. And you get to decide that as a leader because your people are going to take your lead on that. They just will. And so those are my 3 encouragements for you. Please subscribe to this channel if you want more content like this. Give this video a like if you haven't already, and then let me know in the comments, what are some things that you would say that as we're in this season that we're in of doing church online, how do we keep this fresh? How do we keep this relevant and centered on what it's supposed to be and make the most out of this time? I would love to hear from you. We'll see you next time here at Preaching Donkey.